When you check out at the pharmacy, you see the journey from idea to medicine, thanks to our intellectual property system, or IP for short. IP safeguards inventions, like a new way to prevent seizures or lower cholesterol. And IP supports competition from other brands, then lower-cost generics, which are 90% of prescriptions filled in the U.S. Innovation, competition, lower costs, thanks to IP. Learn more at phrma.org/IP works wonders.
Your data is like gold to hackers, and they'll sell it to the highest bidder. Are you protected? McAfee helps shield you, blocking suspicious texts, malicious emails, and fraudulent websites. McAfee Secure VPN lets you browse safely, and its AI-powered text scam detector spots threats instantly. You'll also get up to $2 million of award-winning antivirus and identity theft protection, all for just $39.99 for your first year. Visit McAfee.com. Cancel anytime. Terms apply.
I can tell you exactly how Andrew Cuomo resigned as governor of New York.
Good morning. Let me begin by thanking...
This was back in August of 2021. I was supposed to be in a meeting when it all happened. Instead, I was tweeting through it. And the thing you need to know is that Cuomo's resignation speech didn't sound like a resignation speech.
So let's start New York tough with the truth.
The governor was under increasing pressure over how he'd handled COVID, how he managed his staff, and more than anything, how he treated women. A big report had just come out, accusing him of sexually harassing female staffers.
The report said I sexually harassed 11 women. That was the headline people heard and saw and reacted to. The reaction was outrage. It should have been. However, it was also false. My lawyers, as you just heard from...
But as Cuomo kept talking, he made this narrative turn.
New York tough means New York loving. And I love New York. And I love you.
All of a sudden, the governor was announcing he was calling it quits.
And I think that given the circumstances, the best way I can help now is if I step aside and let government get back to governing. And therefore, that's what I'll do. Because I work...
This is the moment I realized Cuomo might be leaving office, but he was not leaving politics.
Because as we say, it's not about me. It's about we.
I joked about it at the time. I tweeted, "Guys, he's running." I just knew. By leaving on his own terms, Cuomo was going to be able to brush himself off and try again. It wasn't until this month that I found out how.
Breaking news, former New York Governor Andrew Cuomo announcing a short time ago he is entering the race for New York City mayor.
3.5 years after leaving New York's governor's mansion in disgrace, Andrew Cuomo is on the campaign trail hoping for a second act. He's running.
It turns out I wasn't the only one waiting for the other shoe to drop.
If there's one thing that I've learned about Andrew Cuomo, or that we know about Andrew Cuomo, this is his life. He lives and breathes government and politics. He doesn't have much else.
Jimmy Vielkind reports on New York politics for WNYC Public Radio.
You know, Andrew Cuomo is now 67 years old. He started working on political campaigns 50 years ago. He doesn't have many hobbies. He doesn't find solace. He doesn't have like a favorite vacation spot. You know, he lives and breathes this.
Jimmy says the Andrew Cuomo who has entered the New York City mayoral race in 2025 is mostly unchanged from the guy who ran Albany for so many years. And with sitting Mayor Eric Adams embroiled in scandal, Cuomo senses an opportunity.
This is a very fluid and interesting Democratic primary and general election in New York City. You have an incumbent who says that he is running, but who has not so far taken many formal steps to set up a vigorous campaign. He's currently under federal indictment. That's quite damaging in a Democratic primary. You have a series of progressive candidates who are in some ways fighting for the same share of the vote. You have Andrew Cuomo, a person with a proven track record in government, but also with some baggage.
It's a lot of baggage. I mean, how would you characterize the baggage? I characterize it as quite heavy.
It feels like you'd have to pay a fee if you were to fly on most airlines. Agree.
I feel you're like, you're getting a whole new ticket. You're getting a seat for the baggage. You're not, you're getting a seat. Now that former Governor Cuomo is running for mayor, is this a demotion?
I don't think of it as a demotion. The mayor of the city of New York is a powerful government executive. The mayor of the city of New York is responsible for the nation's largest police force, the nation's largest school district. When you're the mayor, you're the one. When you're the governor, you're the one. When you're the president, you're the one. And I think that is the kind of position that appeals to Andrew Cuomo. And it just so happened that he believes that he has an opportunity to be number one again.
You think he's got a shot?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely.
I get a sense you wouldn't bet against Andrew Cuomo.
Oh, I would not bet against him at all.
Today on the show, Andrew Cuomo is trying to rise from the political ashes. But will voters let him? I'm Mary Harris. You're listening to What Next? Stick around. Decisions made in Washington can affect your portfolio every day. But what policy changes should investors be watching? Listen to Washington Wise, an original podcast for investors from Charles Schwab, to hear the stories making news in Washington right now. Host Mike Townsend, Charles Schwab's managing director for legislative and regulatory affairs, takes a nonpartisan look at the stories that matter most to investors, including policy initiatives for retirement savings, taxes and trade, inflation concerns, the Federal Reserve, and how regulatory developments can affect companies, sectors, and even the entire market. Mike and his guests offer their perspective on how policy changes could affect what you do with your portfolio. Download the latest episode and follow at schwab.com/WashingtonWise or wherever you listen.
This episode is brought to you by Built. If you earn points on groceries, travel, and practically everything else you buy, why not consider earning points on one of the biggest monthly expenses, rent? Built changes the game by letting renters earn high-value points on rent. There's no cost to join Built, and as a member, you'll earn valuable points on rent and on your everyday spending. Built points can be transferred to your favorite hotels and airlines, and even the ones you haven't heard of. There are over 500 airlines and 700,000 hotels and properties around the world you can redeem your Built points toward. Points can also be redeemed toward a future rent payment and unique experiences that only Built members can access. So, if you're not earning points on rents, you've got to ask yourself, why not? Start earning points on rents you're already paying by going to joinbuilt.com/whatnext. That's joinbilt.com/whatnext. Be sure to use joinbuilt.com/whatnext to start earning points on your rent payments today.
Jimmy Vielkind has covered former Governor Andrew Cuomo for more than a decade. It's long enough that he's been able to trace patterns in the way Cuomo operates. Jimmy calls them the rules of Cuomo.
The first rule of Cuomo is that chaos is not Cuomonian, and that disorder needs to be stabilized, and that Cuomo is the answer to disorder. The second rule of Cuomo is to always take the deal. Andrew Cuomo, throughout his time in office, has demonstrated that taking the deal, moving the ball down the field is better than holding the pure position and not getting it done. And that is a hallmark of his time in Albany. The third rule of Cuomo is that Cuomo only responds to force, in that unions, actors on the political stage, the ones who threw metaphorical punches, tended to fare better than those who thought they could acquiesce and cut a deal along the way. The fourth rule of Cuomo is, if you're going to shoot the bear, kill the bear.
Come at the king, you best not miss.
That's right. To quote the great Omar, he is very politically risk averse. And what that tells me is that before he embarked on this campaign for mayor, something which he has been laying the groundwork for months, if not more than a year, he arrived to a place where he felt with great certainty that he had a very clear path to victory.
Can you walk me through some of the baggage you alluded to Cuomo having, like the highlight reel? Because by the end of his tenure as governor, as we said, there was quite a lot of it. And it ranged. Like what had happened immediately before he left office was accusations of sexual misconduct, sexual harassment, chronicled by his own attorney general. But then there had been stuff earlier, too, during COVID, allegations of treatment of people in nursing homes. So just explain to me exactly what the accusations against him look like.
The twin pillars of the Andrew Cuomo's downfall in 2021 were allegations that he sexually harassed multiple women, including state employees, and his centralized management of New York's response to the COVID-19 pandemic. With regard to women, the Attorney General, in an outside report, substantiated claims by 11 different people that Cuomo behaved inappropriately toward them in the workplace, that he touched them without their consent, and that he created a hostile work environment. And all of this behavior taken together was adjudged by the Attorney General and later by the U.S. Department of Justice to constitute sexual harassment. Now, Cuomo has denied the allegations that he harassed anybody. There are several lawsuits against him, all of which are pending, none of which have been conclusively decided by a judge. His conduct was the subject of inquiries by several district attorneys, none of whom moved forward with charges, all of which are steps that Cuomo and his aides have said are a measure of vindication about his behavior in office. On top of the harassment scandal was concerns that emerged over Cuomo's pandemic management. He centralized power in Albany. And one of the decisions he made, which history has not looked upon well, was a directive from the state health department that required nursing homes to admit patients who were COVID-19 positive if they had the ability. Cuomo has said that his directive was consistent with federal guidance at the time.
Were there allegations that people died because of this decision? I know it's complicated.
Many people died in nursing homes in New York as a result of COVID-19. Of course, we know that elderly people were a vulnerable population to this virus, and there were many deaths in nursing homes. What really turned a mistake and a high consequence mistake into a scandal was how Cuomo subsequently acted. The state health department and Cuomo's administration took steps to shield the reporting of deaths from COVID-19 in nursing homes, to obscure where they were counted, and essentially to undercount the number of deaths in nursing homes. Many of those deaths were attributed to hospitals when the patients became ill and their last place of residence was a nursing home. For months after scrutiny, Cuomo refused to do a clear breakdown of what those numbers were. And his critics have alleged that he did so in order to make his record during the COVID-19 pandemic look better than it was. And as he was taking these steps, he signed a deal for $5 million to write a memoir of his pandemic management.
Did he ever acknowledge he made a mistake? Even after resigning, really?
That's very much going to be, I think, something for New York voters to weigh. Governor Cuomo, in his announcement video for mayor, said that he made mistakes.
Did I make mistakes? Some painfully? Definitely. And I believe I learned from them and that I am a better person for it.
But whether or not he truly believes that what he did was wrong and he's made amends is, again, I think something for voters to judge. Because independent of that statement, the governor has taken some very aggressive actions to clear his name. And he's, over the course of the last several years that he's been out of office, not at all been shy about punching back.
So let's talk for a second about this mayoral race that Cuomo's entering. The current mayor, Eric Adams, he's running for re-election, but he's damaged because of corruption allegations and the fact that he's basically seen as being in Donald Trump's back pocket. And a whole lot of people have come out of the woodwork to run against Eric Adams, basically. They see an opportunity here. And now we see Andrew Cuomo coming in. How does he fit in with the rest of the field?
Cuomo was definitely more toward the center and the moderate side of the Democratic field for mayor this time. His base is thought to be Orthodox Jewish voters, as well as his traditional supporters who are Black and Latino people from the outer boroughs. So in this regard, he has a very similar base to Eric Adams.
Yeah, I read one analysis this morning that basically suggested this race was Cuomo's to lose because a lot of people are frustrated with Eric Adams as a person, but they aren't necessarily frustrated with who he is as a politician and his moderate ideas. And so Cuomo offers a familiar but kind of new face and offers to continue the Eric Adams idea of what a mayor is. But just let's not have Turkey involved and let's not have a potential indictment by the federal government involved. Let's do something slightly different, not too different. And by the way, you guys know me. Fair?
That's exactly his pitch. And to quote him word for word, his argument in his announcement video is that his campaign is built on, quote, basic competence. He said, I know what needs to be done and I know how to do it. Experience matters. That's his pitch to voters. I will get it done. I will move forward. Chaos is not Cuomonian, and I will get it done.
After the break, how a messy primary race could help bring Andrew Cuomo back to power. This podcast is brought to you by Progressive Insurance. Fiscally responsible, financial geniuses, monetary magicians. These are things people say about drivers who switch their car insurance to Progressive and save hundreds. Visit Progressive.com to see if you could save. Progressive Casualty Insurance Company and Affiliates. Potential savings will vary. Not available in all states or situations. Decisions made in Washington can affect your portfolio every day. But what policy changes should investors be watching? Listen to Washington Wise, an original podcast for investors from Charles Schwab, to hear the stories making news in Washington right now. Host Mike Townsend, Charles Schwab's managing director for legislative and regulatory affairs, takes a nonpartisan look at the stories that matter most to investors, including policy initiatives for retirement savings, taxes and trade, inflation concerns, the Federal Reserve, and how regulatory developments can affect companies, sectors, and even the entire market. Mike and his guests offer their perspective on how policy changes could affect what you do with your portfolio. Download the latest episode and follow at schwab.com/WashingtonWise or wherever you listen.
ID Tech, the first and most trusted tech camp, is where kids ages 7 to 17 find their people. The coding and creating people, the fire-breathing, shell-spinning BattleBots people, the just as happy building games as they are playing them people. At 75 prestigious college campuses all across the country, ID Tech features over 50 epic courses like BattleBots, AI and machine learning, game design, and more. Visit IDTech.com and use code IDTech to save $150 on a week that's guaranteed to be a highlight of summer.
Back at the start of March, Andrew Cuomo jumped into the mayoral race by posting a video on X that is nearly 18 minutes long. It gives you a little sense of how carefully he's going to be cultivating his image in the coming months, which is a little understandable. Most polls show him leading the pack by double digits, so you can see why he'd want to avoid unforced errors. But I asked Jimmy if he thinks Andrew Cuomo will be able to keep avoiding questions like this.
He hasn't engaged in the way that other mayoral candidates have because he has name recognition, he has resources, and so he's not desperate for attention. He gets it automatically. He's taken questions from reporters a few times. He appeared on a national level podcast for a lengthy interview. Are we going to see Andrew Cuomo at the Three Parks Democrats candidate forum, which is going to be watched on Zoom by 40 people? I don't think so.
Yeah, it's interesting because last week, Cuomo took a few questions from the press, I think just 3. And he talked about mistakes he'd made as governor. He said those mistakes included not adding more police to the New York City subway system, which seems very much, it seems about now, not about then in a lot of ways. Like you're running your now campaign. He said he didn't prepare enough for a pandemic. And then also just kind of, I took everything too seriously, which was a head scratcher for me because I guess I want my people in office to take things seriously. I don't know if I just want a guy who's chill, but could be just me.
I think what he was saying was, I went nuts over lots of things and I probably shouldn't have gone nuts over everything.
All right. It's a take. It was notably absent that he didn't say anything about his own behavior as the boss and a man in the workplace. Did that strike you too?
It did strike me, but it didn't necessarily surprise me. There's this guy who just won an election who had also been credibly accused of mistreating women. I believe he was found liable for sexual misconduct toward a woman and was elected resoundingly. So I don't know the answer to that question. I think every voter is going to have to determine for themselves whether or not Andrew Cuomo has sinned to a degree that is disqualifying, or whether he has atoned sufficiently to the degree of sin that voter perceives. As a reporter, I don't know if it's my job to say whether or not he has appropriately atoned, apologized, made amends, accounted for his past conduct. What we've seen so far in this primary is that there are plenty of voters who believe that they are willing to let bygones be bygones and move on. And there are also plenty of voters, including some of the women who accused Cuomo of harassment, who are very much not willing to sit down, shut up, and let him make a case for being a person controlling the government going forward.
Yeah, I was going to ask about that because it isn't our place to judge someone in that way. But the women who accused him kind of is their place to judge.
Lindsay Boylan, the first woman who accused Cuomo publicly of sexual harassment, has been one of his loudest critics. She has appeared at protests outside of his fundraising events. And she says absolutely not. He has not been held accountable. He has, according to Boylan, acted inappropriately and aggressively and disgustingly in how he pursued his legal defense against numerous claims, in that he subpoenaed accusers who had not sued him, in that he sought the gynecological records of Charlotte Bennett, another woman who publicly accused Cuomo of sexual harassment. And Boylan has stated that she will not pipe down and she will indeed speak up, reminding voters as much as possible for the next several months of Andrew Cuomo's record and why she believes it's disqualifying.
What have other politicians said about Andrew Cuomo entering the race? Because notably, Kathy Hochul, current governor, was his lieutenant governor. It hasn't been that long. These people have been around, are still around now. So are they greeting him with open arms? Are they waiting to see what happens?
They have been conspicuously non-acting about Andrew Cuomo. There's a world in which someone like Kathy Hochul, someone like Kirsten Gillibrand, U.S. Senator and a Me Too champion, who did speak out against Cuomo in 2021. There's a world in which they greeted news of his primary candidacy and said, he's not fit. He's absolutely disqualified. New Yorkers have moved on. They did not say that. They have absolutely given Cuomo space to make the case that we've just been talking about to voters. They have said that voters will weigh in, and it tells us quite a bit about where we are as a society in processing alleged sexual harassment, workplace misconduct, and all the thorny questions that politics has been grappling with since the start of the Me Too movement in 2017.
Okay, let's talk about where this is all headed. There is a June primary, Democratic primary. A whole bunch of people, including Andrew Cuomo, are now part of it. It's really like a rat king of candidates, frankly, here in New York City. It's a lot. What do we need to know going into June?
We need to know that this is going to be incredibly, incredibly complicated and incredibly difficult to predict. On top of what you just described, Mary, about this panoply of candidates, is that this is a ranked choice voting election. And it is the second time that New York City voters have selected a mayor using this system of ranked choice voting. And I don't think that it's fully sunk into folks exactly what the most strategic ways to do that is. And so under ranked choice voting, if you chose Mary Harris, Jimmy Vielkind, and then Andrew Cuomo as your third choice, Cuomo would get the vote of that person if Mary and Jimmy, we fell short. It's unclear how this is going to play out.
So what you're saying is like, what matters is whether Andrew Cuomo is a choice at all for people. That's a very salient fact. He could be a second or third choice, but as long as he's in that mix, it could end up working for him.
That's right.
You're telling me to buckle up.
I think you should absolutely buckle up. Right now, polls show Andrew Cuomo with a wide lead over his challengers. But even though the primary is relatively close, it's still very far away.
Jimmy, I'm grateful for you. Thanks for coming on the show and walking me through what's going on right now.
Thank you. It's good to speak with you again. And it is, as always, a pleasure to be with you and your listeners.
Jimmy Vielkind covers New York politics for WNYC. And that's the show. What Next is produced by Paige Osburn, Elena Schwartz, Rob Gunther, Anna Phillips, Madeline Ducharme, and Ethan Oberman. Ben Richmond is the Senior Director of Podcast Operations here at Slate. And I'm Mary Harris. Go track me down on Blue Sky if you'd like. I'm at Mary Harris. Meanwhile, thanks for listening. I'll catch you back here next time.